In this conclusion to our Paint Sprayers 101 series, we're going to reveal which handheld airless sprayer we selected for testing. We'll go over the rationale for that selection, and we'll provide an in-depth test report to help you decide if an airless sprayer will meet your needs. All this coming up right now here on Shop Tales and Lore. If you were with us for part 1, and we'll put a link to that video on your screen, you'll recall that we went over the 3 basic spray technologies: compressed air, airless, and hvlp, and discussed the pros and cons of each. Then we explained why, for a couple of different reasons, we wanted to experiment with an example of the fairly new class of handheld, self-contained airless sprayers. Our motivation was twofold. First, to find one with a good balance of price, build quality, flexibility, and performance for DIY type use. Secondly, we had been considering getting one of these sprayers to supplement our conventional airless units here in the shop and wanted to see what all the excitement was about. We looked at several different brands, but frankly were impressed with the wide variety offered by Graco and kept coming back to their product lineup in the course of our research. They have developed nearly a dozen different models in 3 distinct categories: DIY, Project Series, and Pro Series, and we figured that somewhere in that broad mix of features and price ranges we would find a model that would fit our test criteria. We settled on the Graco TrueCoat 360 DS. We picked it because it's from a major airless manufacturer and thus widely available. It's reasonably priced, about $170 on Amazon. The controls are pretty straightforward and intuitive. It's a corded model, making it unnecessary to buy and maintain a unique battery platform. And the manufacturer states that it develops enough pressure to spray paints unthinned, which saves a good deal of time and trouble. Before we get into the testing segment, we want to clarify that this channel has no affiliation whatever with Graco or any other tool manufacturer. We purchased this model at retail, as would any other consumer. Our sole objective is to give a fair and balanced review of this sprayer's performance so that you can decide for yourself if it would be a good choice for your projects. In the box, we have the combination motor pump guard assembly, a cup for the flexible liners, which is really more like a support frame, 4 of the 32-ounce liners, a cup lid assembly which houses the vacuum valve, an important component that we'll get to shortly, the owner's manual, a reminder to flush out any pump protector fluid that may be left in the unit from factory testing, a spare vacuum valve, and 2 tips, one intended to produce a 12-inch spray pattern and the other for a 4-inch fan. Curiously, both tips have a 15,000ths of an inch orifice, and these are the only 2 tips available for the TrueCoat 360 series. I'm guessing that Graco's engineers determined this is the optimal size tip for the pump's capabilities, but the manual doesn't go into this topic. It's important to know which types of materials are compatible with the sprayer. Here the manufacturer lists water-based and oil-based materials as acceptable, but they also note that materials containing flammable solvents such as xylene, toluene, naphtha, mech, lacquer thinner, acetone, denatured alcohol, and turpentine cannot be used under any circumstances. Since shellacs are commonly mixed with denatured alcohol as a transfer medium, this would appear to rule out the use of shellac. There's a place in the base for storing the extra tip, but it's a loose fit and doesn't seem very secure. Besides, once you put an airless tip into production, you won't want to store it in the open air anyway, a very important point that we'll get to in the section on cleaning the sprayer. The controls are labeled and easily accessible. The pump function knob on the left side of the unit has two positions, vertical for priming the pump and horizontal for spraying. This DS model has a selector switch on top to toggle between the pump's two speeds. And finally, the trigger of course activates the motor and pump for priming and spraying operations. The guard assembly on this model is not removable, which is unusual for airless sprayers, but all this really means is that the guard must be cleaned in place on the sprayer. If you're using the sprayer for the first time, be sure to flush the system with clean water as outlined in the manual. This will remove any residual material or pump protector fluid that may be left over from factory testing. To prepare for spraying, place one of the cup liners in the cup support and fill the liner with material. Clean the threads, then tighten the cup cover onto the cup support, being sure to align the arrow on the cover within range of the indicator decal on the cup support. Now align the vacuum valve on top of the cup assembly with the pump mode selector knob and twist to lock. This should place the vacuum valve on the left side of the sprayer, slightly behind the pump knob. Open the vacuum valve cap and tilt the sprayer so that the valve is at the highest point of the cup assembly. Gently squeeze the flex liner to purge any air through the valve. Once you see the material start to enter the valve body, stop squeezing and close the cap. At this point, any air should have been removed from the liner. Place the pump selector knob in the vertical or prime position and squeeze the trigger for 5 to 10 seconds to prime the pump. No material should come through the tip when in priming mode, but you might want to point the sprayer in a safe direction or into a waste container just to be safe. As with any sprayer, it's always a good idea to try a few test patterns before pulling the trigger on your project. Let's see what we can expect from this one. This is better atomization than I was expecting from a DIY class sprayer, and actually pretty good. These were shot on the low speed setting. Now let's try a few test pieces. These are 1/4-inch birch plywood prepped with a dark primer so you can better see the spray pattern and performance. I'm using the gray or 4-inch tip with the guard turned to the vertical position. This results in a vertical fan shape, while positioning the guard horizontally produces a horizontal fan. This is exactly the opposite of most conventional airless guns and took a little getting used to. With a little low-angle reflected light on the sample, you can see the coverage is pretty thorough. The atomization is not quite as fine as I got with the cardboard sample, but still very respectable for this price range and class of sprayer. Let's try a couple of more samples. I moved a little faster this time and didn't get quite as heavy a coating as with the first sample. One characteristic I'm seeing right away is that with that 15/1000ths of an inch tip, these things put out a lot of material in a hurry. Let's try a sample with the unit set to the higher motor speed. Even moving pretty quickly again, you can see how the faster pump speed built up more material on the surface. Let's try one with the guard in the horizontal position, again set to the fast motor speed. I don't think there's any noticeable difference. It's still throwing quite a bit of material, but it is controllable depending on how fast you move the sprayer. Let's simulate a vertical work surface and see how that goes. That's really very good. Even coverage with no excessive buildup, no sags, no runs. To clean the unit, separate the lid from the cup support and set the sprayer upside down with the lid still attached. This is a water-based product, so we're filling the liner about halfway with clean water. Don't remove the lid from the sprayer at this point or you'll end up with material running down onto the sprayer housing. Don't ask how I know. Shake the sprayer vigorously and dump out the wastewater. This first rinsing will clean most of the material from the liner and the lid. Repeat this process once or twice more until the coating of material is flushed from the liner and lid. Using a nylon bristle brush, clean out any remaining material, especially from the lid threads and crevices. With the liner, cup support, and cup lid thoroughly clean, it's time to add more clean water and flush out the pump. With the sprayer inverted and the mode selector knob set to prime, pull the trigger for 5 to 10 seconds to put clean water through the pump. Then switch the knob to the spray position, rotate the tip 180 degrees to the unclogged position, and press the trigger for about 5 seconds. This should flush any remaining material out of the tip orifice. Separate the cup lid from the sprayer. Remove the strainer and clean it thoroughly, as well as the strainer inlet in the sprayer body. Finally, clean the vacuum valve, guard, and tip with a nylon or other soft bristle brush. If you're going to store the sprayer for a while, run some pump protector solution through the unit to protect it from rust, corrosion, and freezing weather. With their tiny orifice, spray tips are vulnerable to clogging. Once a tip is placed in production, No matter how well it is cleaned, it's a good idea to store it submerged in solvent. We keep ours in paint thinner or mineral spirits to help ensure that the tip doesn't get blocked. Once a tip is clogged with hardened material, it's next to impossible to open it up again. Let's review what we learned from putting this model through its paces. Atomization and pattern quality. Overall, we were very pleased with this little sprayer's performance in this regard. We knew going into the test that it was unlikely that any handheld unit could match the power and fine atomization of a full-size production sprayer, but with maximum pump pressure of 1500 psi, the 360DS produced a very good finish of uniform thickness with no runs or sags, even on a vertical test piece. The key is to move fast enough to keep up with the volume of material produced by the pump, but not so fast that a chattering or pulsating pattern results. Controls. With only 3 basic controls, the pump mode knob, the motor speed switch, and the tip guard orientation, anyone can quickly get up and running with one of these sprayers. It has no knocks coming on its control features. Bulk and weight. The 360DS weighs 3.5 pounds empty, which can be a little tough on the hands and wrists over a long spraying session. On the other hand, with only a 1 quart material capacity and a 50% duty cycle rating, it really wasn't designed to be a production sprayer either. Painting large areas like walls, fences, or decks would require a break now and then for both the pump and the operator. For the average DIY user or home shop enthusiast planning to use no more than a couple of dozen gallons of material per year, Graco's TrueCoat 360DS is a perfectly adequate, budget-friendly sprayer. Of course, there are more sophisticated handheld sprayers out there with added flexibility, like the ability to use conventional airless guards and tips. This isn't a fine finishing tool by any stretch, but it can take on most DIY type projects with great results.